Hello friends, we're back in Rising World. Today we're going to finish up the stick wall tutorial, and this is the second time I've done this. The first time I did it, I had an hour and a half's worth of video, which was way too long, and I discovered that my microphone was not working. So this is what the wall will turn out to look like. And I was very upset with myself, by the way. This is what the wall will turn out looking like. So we've got our stick wall. We've got plaster on the inside. We've got a window with trim. And we have siding on the outside, which I have painted. So I went ahead and built myself a couple more walls so that we can finish up our little house tutorial here. We have the adobe wall here on the outside, and we have our stick wall on the front. Doesn't match, but it doesn't matter. So I got started here. We're going to put in a window, we're going to finish the siding, and put plaster on. So let's get started. I got my siding ready to go. Let's put that up here. I'm using snapping, automatic snapping. I'm going to try and snap it to this piece, and that looks good. I'm going to hit the control button here. So we have manual positioning enabled, and I'm going to check to see how this aligns. And as you can see, it's going to cover up part of my window, so I need to resize that a little bit. Got my fine controls on because I like that. And I'm hitting the Y button to check this alignment. It looks pretty good, but I'm not quite sure. That looks better. I'm going to go inside here and check. Yeah, that lines up. I'm looking to see that it lines up here with the opening. Okay. Now, let's say that we wanted to save this preset, which we can do using the C key. And that's what these two things are. So this one is Save Preset, and this one is Load Preset. So we've got this item still selected, and we're going to save the preset. I'm going to pick an empty slot. Whoops, empty slot. So you have to hold down the C key while you're doing this, and what that's going to do is when I pick this empty slot, it's going to fill the name with C's. That seems like I don't know, something wrong with the with the program there. Okay, so I'm going to call this one siding, and it looks like it's 3 by 3. That's close enough. 3 by 3. And click OK. Now, I'm going to let go of that and get my siding back, which is still going to be that size, right? So I'm just going to click Insert on this piece, which you'll see is a completely different size. I could click Insert again on this piece to get it to be that size, but this is another method for doing that. So I'm going to instead, I've got this piece selected. I'm not clicking or pointing at anything else. And I'm going to go to the C key again, the radial menu, and this time I'm going to say Load Preset. Click on that. And I've got these empty spots. I've done this a couple times before, but this I know is the one that I want. I've called it Siding 3 by 3. So I click on that, and it makes it the size that I want. So that's cool. However, it is not the size that I want. I'm going to fill in this spot right here. So I'm just going to click right there in the center. I'm going to go ahead and hit Control so that I don't have to hang on to it. and I'm going to size it out using the Shift key and the right arrow. And it looks like it is about the right size. I'm going to bring it back in a little bit. It doesn't have to be exact, but close is what we got. All right, and then I'm going to hit the page down key, Shift and page down. This should get us pretty close to perfect in terms of positioning. Not quite, but pretty close. And then I'm going to use I'm going to turn off the grid, make sure it's off, and just kind of push it into position. That looks good to me. All right, so that's our siding. And now we're going to do the same thing with our plaster. So we got this block here of plaster, and I already know that I made a really big sheet down here, so I'm going to go ahead and just hit insert, and it makes my plaster the same size as that big sheet, but I know that it's going to be too big because I sized it for the outside. But I'm going to come over here, and I've got automatic snapping on, and it is driving me crazy. Obviously that is not the position I want. I'm going to hit insert again. That will get the position I want. I'm going to move this up a little bit. Okay. I'm going to hit Control and page up to get it in the upper position that I want. That looks pretty good. Now I know that this piece is longer than I want. It's going to be sticking into the Adobe, but yep, there it is. So I already know that that's too wide, so I'm going to hit Shift and the left arrow, and that brought it in. So it doesn't matter that it's sticking into the Adobe as long as it doesn't show. So that's good there, and that's good there. Okay, so that's our first piece of plasterboard. And I already know that this is the right size, so I'm going to take my control off, and I'm going to stick it up here, and I'm going to hit insert again. Now I could do the little trick that I just showed you with load preset, but honestly, I find using insert works really well if all you're looking for is the size and shape. So I'm snapping now to the edge of that plasterboard, and that's already, I know, in the right position. So I'm going to go with that. And then I'm going to go over here and do the same thing. And it's not in a perfect position, but I think I can just move it out a little bit. I'm going to hit Control and just come this way with it. That's good. And I'm pretty sure that that will not be causing a problem outside, but let's go look. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. And then all we have to do is this one. And because I already have a piece that fits, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to go up here and aim at this one and hit insert, and then bring it out here. Looks like I'm going to need to position it a little bit. So hit Control and just use the arrow keys to get that into position. Looks like I might need to just give me a little bit more leeway there and bring it down just a tad. Okay. Uh-oh. I was using the wrong material. Well, that's not what we want. Whee! Okay, let's do that again. Insert. Position it here. Hit Control. Move it over. I just want it a teeny bit wider. That looks good. And then move it down. Okay, better. Better. All right. So there we go. We have our plastered wall and our siding wall. But over here, I painted it. So let's paint it to match. We need our paintbrush. You could use the paintbrush or the roller. Either one works. And we'll right click to load the paint. You could use any of these colors or make one of your own using the color picker here. Just know that the color that you see here is not necessarily going to match exactly what you're seeing in the game. It's just slightly different. I've already created this blue here that I like, so I'm going to use that. And you can save your colors. So we could grab this and click on this little floppy disk icon, which everyone knows now in 2024 means save, right? Select that and then paint. And the paintbrush takes like 3 hits before it's more or less solid. And every material takes paint slightly differently. So there's our blue paint on our wall. And we know that we're just painting that one piece, so it does not come through. But if I paint this block here, it does come through. So that is a disadvantage of working with blocks. And you can, of course, put coverings over your blocks, but then it's just like the other method, basically, only fatter. So that is one thing. If you don't mind your blocks being the same color on both sides, you can certainly paint them. But to achieve one color on one side and one color on another, you have to use 2 layers. So we're going to take that paint off, and to do that, you use the sponge right here. That takes the paint out of your brush, and then you just can remove it. So let's finish painting real quick. And right click and load that paint color, or this paint color, same color. And left click to paint, 2 and 3. One of the advantages of using these big sheets is that the painting gets done really fast. Okay, so I made a bigger opening here than I had over there. The next step now, before we put the windows in, the next step is to put in our trim. Now, you could do this a number of different ways. I chose to put the wooden trim all the way around. You could choose to maybe just put a windowsill and then put the plaster in on this side. But then on the outside, I think you would need some trim on the outside. So that would be like an extra step. I'm just going to go ahead and put the wood in, just like we did on the other one. I have some wood selected, so I'll use that. And I'm going to go ahead and get my sizes off this right here. So I'll hit insert to get my size. That's at least for the depth and height of it. And obviously the snapping is going to make me crazy. So I'm going to turn off snapping and enter. And then I'm just going to rotate that around. And I rotated it, of course, using the arrow keys. And I'm going to get it long enough. Let's change the size precision to 1 to make it a little quicker. That's pretty close. I think it's not perfect. All right, so I need to decide how this sits. And what I did over here was I had it so it stuck out a little bit on the outside and more on the inside. So it's like a windowsill. So I think I will use the grid. Hit G for the grid. And this obviously is not going to work. So I'm going to make the grid smaller until I get something that works. I think that's what I used. So that looks to me to be about right. I'm going to hit Control and I'm going to go over here and check that. That looks okay. And that looks a little short. So I'm going to change my scale precision to 0.01. And I'm going to make this just a little bit wider. Turn off my grid. Turn off the grid for a second. Whoops. I just had to get the right arrow because something is a little screwy. Okay, turn the grid back on. Okay, that looks good. I'm going to check real quick to see what I have on my movement. I have local movement. I'm going to change that to default because the local movement is kind of confusing me a little bit. Okay, that looks good to me. So I'm going to accept that. And now I need to do my top plate and my side plates, and those are a different size. So I'm going to release that, come over here, get this size, hit insert. And this should be pretty close to the same, but it may not be exact. I'm going to use the left arrow key just to rotate that. Whoops. Okay. It's the up arrow key, I guess. Okay, that's 90. Just gonna place that so that the outer edge matches. I think that's close, but not perfect. Okay, that's pretty good. I'm going to hit Control because I'd like to check and make sure. Oh, see, now it's not the right size. Isn't that interesting? Huh. That window is a lot taller than this one. Okay, well, I messed up somehow. How did I do that? Well, anyway. Let's just make it shorter. We'll hit Shift and page down. Whoops. Okay, I think that's pretty good. All right, so I've got that already in control. So we'll just move it over this way. And is that in the right spot? I don't think so. Not quite. So let's turn off the grid real quick and move that over just a little bit. Okay. And what we're going to do is, because I already have that in position, I am just going to rotate it around. If I can find the right key. Manual positioning on. Let me just go to my rotation here. Rotation local. Let's try world or default. Let's see what that does. And I'll hit Control and page up. Nope. Wow. Okay. Okay. Weird. See, this is what I mean about how interesting it is that no matter what you're doing, if you change positions, like where you're looking and what the piece is doing, it doesn't always behave the same way. So I'm going to just rotate this way and this way. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and make it wide enough for the space. And I'm just eyeballing this. The grid is off, snapping is off. I'm just eyeballing it. It looks good to me. Okay, so there is our trim for our window. So it sticks out a little bit. And I think that looks fine. And we're going to take and put our window frames in. Rotate this around. I definitely made this window a different size. I mean, I know it's wider, but I expected it to be taller too. And I must have goofed up. So let's page that down a little bit so that it fits. That's about right. Okay, now I think I want this to be 2 frames in this one spot. So what I'm going to do is turn on the grid and try to figure out where the center of this window is. Looks like, yeah, it looks like this line right here is the center. And where did I put that on this window? Where, front to back? I put it, I think, right in the center. Yeah, that looks like the center to me. Okay, so if this line is the center of the window, that's where we need our edge to line up. And let's see, whoops, there. That line right there, that's the center. Okay, so I'm gonna hit Control. I'm gonna move this over to the left. That looks good as far as the left-hand side. I don't believe it's in the center front to back. It is not quite. I'll worry about that in a second. But what I need to do is make sure that we're lining up with the center line, which is this one, the one that my X is pointing at. So I need to make my window a bit narrower. I'm going to hit Shift and the left arrow. And it's going to size from the center of the window, which is not that helpful. Let's turn the grid off for a second. And I'm just going to eyeball that. Turn the grid back on. Looks like my window needs to be just a little bit wider. That looks pretty good. Oops, turn that grid off. I would say that that's touching. And it seems to be right on the line. So I don't like where this is placed. The grid lines are not quite where they should be. I could make it a smaller grid, but I think I'm just going to turn the grid off and push it out a little bit so it's kind of in the center. Turn that grid back on and have a look. That looks better to me. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and accept that. And then I'm just going to use my arrow keys. I'll turn the grid on so that it moves quicker. And it's really close. Oh, no, it isn't. Okay, the grid was lying to me. I could get upset and take both of these windows out, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to make my window a little bit bigger. Turn off the grid. And that looks pretty good to me. And then I'm going to get my pane of glass. And put it in there, put it in there. And we've got our windows. And the last thing I did over here was to paint it. So let's get our paintbrush. And I just chose white to paint it. So we're gonna right click, choose white. And choose white on this one. And as you see, every material takes paint differently. This turned out kind of grayish with like a bad paint job, but it is what it is. Okay, so that is it for today. We have our wall with our lovely blue siding and our plaster on the inside. Next time we're going to do a brick wall. This here will be a brick wall, so it's going to be done slightly differently from the adobe wall. We'll be using brick, and but I think I'm going to do I'll do it in blocks, but I'm going to do it in thinner blocks so that it's more the width of a regular wall. And you can see that that will be another method to use that may work better for you. And then the next lesson after that, we're going to learn how to do the peaked roof. And there are a couple of different methods for doing that. So we'll do 2 methods for peaked roof. And then from there, why don't you tell me in the comments what you'd like to see? I'm thinking that people like to know how to do circles or curves and things like that, so we might tackle some of those things. So that's all for now, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.